This week, I'm here to ask a question about a little game called Demon Souls, and why didn't Demon Souls do what Dark Souls did, which was create a subgenre?
When it comes to Demon Souls, there was a lot of things that they were still working out at the time. Being it on a PlayStation-only exclusive, it limited the amount of people that were actually playing. So when it came around to their second game, they had a lot more knowledge from the first on what to improve. It wasn't restricted to a certain player base.
I would say Demon Souls is kind of like the forgotten child of that series, where it's like so many people don't know what it is. Like Demon Souls, there's something before Dark Souls, I didn't even realize it existed. And it really did set the blueprint for those games. And that blueprint became incredibly popular. And Demon Souls really has all of it. Like, it has pretty much most of the key elements that defined what these Souls games have become. It's almost like Demon Souls wasn't marketable enough to be like, oh, we can Demon Souls 2. It's like, I don't think it's marketable enough. Like, people just didn't find it at the time. And I think even Jordan alluded to it, it's like, the time period matters so much for that game because it was a PlayStation exclusive at a time where Sony wasn't the king. So I think that hurt it a lot. Where it's like, oh, Sony, I didn't play Sony games, I'm playing Xbox games.
The PS3 was not in its prime. Like, in 2009, that was the Xbox was still winning.
It was the concept of the multi-platform. Like, right now Sony's dominating that, but at the time, Xbox was like, if you want to play with your friends, you have to get the Xbox. That's where people are playing together.
And when Dark Souls launched, which was third-party available on everything, it meant everyone who might have heard about Demon Souls might have gone, all right, well, since I didn't own a PS3 and I owned an Xbox, I can now finally play and see what they were talking about.
I definitely recall the reason I got Demon Souls at all was because it was reviewed well, I think by GameSpot. It was one of the platforms that it was a niche. It was a very niche game. Most people weren't reviewing it or covering it. And I just recall it standing out and going, this game's really good. It was like 9.5 or whatever it was. You should get it. And it's like, it's super punishing, but it's really rewarding at the same time. Like, oh, this game sounds interesting. I should get it. But that was one of the ones that stood out to me was Demon Souls because of that exact fact. It was like, this is something special and people are not going to pick it up because it looks scary in the sense of like, it's a super tough game. It's difficult to, get into from the start. Like the game straight off the bat is challenging. Like it doesn't mess around.
One big difference with Demon Souls beginning, though, is it sets you up to fail right from the start.
Yeah.
Even if you beat the first boss, which you're not meant to,
no.
You die, and you continue on. You're meant to be knocked down to then start.
Games at the time we were so used to in like 2009, it's just like, difficult games were a rarity. They were getting even more rare, and then this game comes out, it's like harder than anything else that year by far.
Well, it directly ties into the marketing for this game, where it's like Sony didn't believe in it at all. In fact, they were directly concerned about the game. Where it's like, this game is no one's going to like it. It's going to get bad reviews, and it's just too challenging. It's just too difficult. No one's going to like it. It feels bad.
Well, to say the words of Shuhei Yoshida is that this is crap. He recalled saying on a Game Informer interview or something, and then this is an unbelievably bad game, and so much so that Sony didn't publish this outside of Japan. They gave it to Atlas because Atlas...
It's just the hyperbole of his statements where it's like, at the time, it's like, that's how strong they felt. It was like, this game is just bad. Like, we shouldn't release this. This is how bad this game is. And it's just funny, like, where it started and what it became. And it was all there. Like, Demon Souls had all that aspect. But it does have that hurdle. Like, the initial hurdle. Like, there's many people have fallen to the start of a Demon Souls, Dark Souls game. It's like, you know what? Ain't for me.
Demon Souls did everything Dark Souls did, but it was exclusive, and they didn't like it. Sony wasn't supportive of it. Its PS3 wasn't as strong as it could be. And then, people... there's the cult following of, this game's good. And then when Dark Souls came out, people who played Demon Souls, or really wanted to play Demon Souls, play it, and they're like, everyone needs to play this game, because this is something special. And it's kind of sad that Demon Souls kind of missed out on that, even because, it does everything right. It does the invasions and everything that Dark Souls has done. It's done the boss thing, which it's got some quite good bosses.
I found that the areas were tougher than the bosses.
Yeah, and that's something where I honestly think is an improvement and something that the Dark Souls continuation made better. And I really think it's the overall world design, because Demon Souls was so disconnected with its five locations. Yeah, where like Dark Souls, it's interconnected, and more than anything, I think is the boss design. I think these games has so quickly became it's almost like a boss run. It's like everything you remember the most. I think some locations are important. Anne Londo, for example, you definitely know them, but it's the bosses that people really remember, and you go because of how iconic they are. I think Dark Souls was the first one where there are so many iconic bosses in that game, as opposed to Demon Souls, where I think Demon Souls does have good bosses, but
you remember the world more than you do the bosses.
Yeah, and the challenge more. Because I think the challenge becomes harder in later games for the bosses, and that they're the selling point of the game. It's like how hard the bosses are. The enemies are just the trial or challenge to get there. The shame for me all about Demon Souls is the fact that people overlook it because they don't realize it's part of the series. Like, it's a good example. Is like it's the 2 effect. Like the 2 of almost everything's always better. Uncharted 2, Assassin's Creed 2. Like it's the ability to improve on
true.
it, identify the mistakes, and go. You know what? We have more time, we have the interest of the franchise, and now we know what we want to fix and add, and it's almost always the better version is the second version of the game, when they really should be. It really should be Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, and then you could probably just Bloodborne's in there somewhere, I guess.
I feel as though most people that play Demon Souls nowadays are ones that have finished the other games and crave more.
It's a good game. It's underrated and a bit forgotten. It didn't quite create a subgenre, but it certainly led to one being created. Thanks for watching. This video is from our podcast, The Gaming Booth, which you can find right here on Optional Extra, as well as impressions, discussions and reviews on all the latest games. I'll see you on the next one.
So the world might be mended.